me call the meeting of the Arlington Finance Committee to order. First order of business is the minutes. I gave a few changes, clarifying changes to Peter, nothing of wild substance. Are there any other corrections or changes for the minutes?
I have a few.
Okay, Christine?
Under natural resources, when you say expenses increase to cover holiday lights and playgrounds, do you have that, Peter? Do you have that? I would, instead of saying playgrounds, I would say expenses increase to cover holiday lights and other supplies.
Okay.
Because it's not simply for playgrounds. With engineering, the increases for water projects and paving projects.
Something else there. Thank you.
And removal of ice and snow, the budget is 80% of the 10-year average.
Thank you.
And I think that's it.
Okay, are there any other changes to the minutes?
Under,
Brian?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Under the treasurer, where you had the budget for the treasurer, you have, he noted that the finance cost line will pay for the credit card bill paying expenses. It's the banking services, not finance costs.
Including that, I guess, huh?
And
Banking
just,
service. Instead of that, right?
right, in lieu of finance costs, it's just the banking services.
Okay, are there any other changes? Now, keep in mind, I hope that all the people responsible for certain departments, after the votes, are examining the minutes to make sure they're accurate and tie in with what we did vote. So hopefully that will be done.
Especially since I'm hard of hearing.
Okay, any other changes? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. All those, any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes are accepted as corrected. At this point, I'd like to welcome the school department, administration, school committee members. Appreciate you coming. So you have this opportunity, Superintendent, to call off school tomorrow if you want to. Of course, this probably won't go on TV for about 3 days.
Oh, I already just.
Kids off your house.
In fact, I just said, before I came over, I sent an email off to parents and staff, just because they like to have a sense of when the decisions can be made. And unfortunately, it probably can't be made until the morning. It's very hard to call. Yeah.
Gee, Boston's already done it.
I know, I was just checking my text. Somerville has 2.
So it's coming out. Okay, back to on the budget. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's nice to see you all. It's been a while. First of all, I would like to introduce John Denizio, who this is his first time here at the Finance Committee meeting. And John he's probably met many of you during the course of the year, but I just would like to introduce him more formally.
Have you told them we don't bite?
I did.
Okay,
I did.
that's good.
Yeah, he was. Or did
I
don't remember you saying they didn't.
No, but anyway, what we're going to do this evening is I'm going to do part of the presentation, and John's going to do the other part of it, and we'll both be available for questions. But I also want to acknowledge the school committee members that are here tonight supporting us and have been through this whole budget process along with us. Our chair, Jeff Thielman, Len Carden, who's on the budget committee, subcommittee, and Chrissy Allison-Ampe, who is the chair of the budget committee, and Bill Hayner. So thank you for being here. We are not going to project. I thought everybody would prefer just to have a hard copy that we could walk through and go over the key issues. So I think one of the things that would be helpful is for me to give a quick update about the building projects, which has certainly been a very dominant issue in the school department over the last couple of years in response to enrollment growth. And again, I take this opportunity, and I take whatever opportunity I can to also just thank the town of Arlington. It really has been an extraordinary amount of support that the school department has received with respect to building projects. And you know, I know that I speak for all of the staff in the schools, that they feel very grateful for this support. So one of the things we can be very proud of is that Stratton opened this year after having the final phase of the renovation of the school. And those of you who may not have seen it, it's really turned out, it's really lovely. And hopefully we can also arrange, if you would like, and same thing for the Capital Committee, a tour at some point. We did some tours in the fall, but there may be people who weren't able to make it, and we'd be happy to do that when the snow's gone. I think there'd be a better time anyway. But the students were out in modulars for the whole year, are back, and it's wonderful. But we also have the Thompson opening its new 6 classrooms, but not until November. There were some delays, construction delays as we went through the project, but we had sort of a seamless move into the classrooms. One project that is taking quite a bit of time is the Gibbs project. We're opening up the renovated Gibbs, which is right now is on time, and the expected date of completion, substantial completion, is going to be the very end of July, which would give us a month to get in there, have furniture ordered, and set the school up for the start of school in September. But opening a school is not just about the building and the construction. There's a lot that has to be planned in terms of schedules and curriculum, staffing. And the list goes on. As we've gone into the project, we have found more things that we need to really attend to, because our goal is a very smooth opening in September. I think it's going to be a very exciting opportunity for the town to have this school, and I know that the staff members who are going to be at Gibbs next year are also very excited about this. Hardy, we have to add 6 additional classrooms to Hardy for enrollment growth, and the planning has been going on all year. Construction is slated to begin this month, and the goal is to have substantial completion right before Thanksgiving next year, and the move plan will be over the holiday break. And then many of you attended or have listened into all of the discussions that have gone on about the high school in the last few months. We are in the feasibility phase of the process that you go through with MSBA. And during this part of the project, we develop an educational plan for the school. And that has been a very comprehensive and inclusive process. I will say that the school faculty and administration, and central administration as well, have really been talking about the educational plan at the high school for the last 4 years. But the intensity of those discussions and the writing of the plan has really been something more recent. When I say it's inclusive, we've had a number of forums in town, community forums, and we have another one planned, since this is going to be probably on TV before then, April 4th. And that particular one, a lot of community members might like to attend, because you'll be able to see what are some of the possible orientations of either a new high school on site, renovation addition, and different possible renditions of that as well. There's a lot more to be done on this, and the planning actually will take we'll go through a number of stages. One will be submitting the educational plan to MSBA in April, which also has a list of all of the classroom spaces that are expected. Then then we will also be letting the MSBA know what our preferred site is going to be, and then some preferred options. That part of the process takes place over the summer. Our goal is to have be before the MSBA in August, so that they approve our preferred option, and that we can then begin construction. The schematic drawings for the high school, with the goal of then coming to an agreement on, who pays what and how much. That will be coming further down next year. So this particular project is going to need a debt override. And right now, the tentative thinking about that is that it would probably be late spring in 19. Okay. I don't know if there's anybody has any questions on that before we move on to the rest of it. But I thought you'd like an update on where we are, because this has been such a dominant issue in town for the last few years.
So are there any questions on any of the projects? The high school project, as far as new construction, additions, all renovations, when is that part of it going to be taking place, and when will you be getting community input on that?
Well, there's various phases of it. This community forum on April 4th, you'll be able to see some of the options that the architect presented to the building committee, in fact, last night. There were 7 of them. There's 6 options that were presented. So the community will be able to see these options. Basically, what we have to be able to decide is whether we're going to have a new school or renovation addition or just a renovation. I think after going through the cost analysis and the site analysis and the enrollment that we're going to be seeing in the high school, I think we have at this point said renovation is simply not going to work for a whole variety of reasons, and one is it's just not configured in the right space for the enrollment growth that we have. Right now at the high school there are 1,350 students approximately, but the design number for the high school is 1,755. So we're going to be seeing an increase of nearly 400 students, and we're going to start seeing those students almost the day that the school opens. So right now the school is very tight. We're just constantly trying to find extra classrooms for the increasing enrollment we're seeing now. But once we decide on one of those 3 big options, whether it's going to be renovation, renovation addition, or new, once that's decided, then there could be, if say it was renovation addition, there could be a variety, and that final decision will take place later. Right now, it's the big concept issue that has to be decided, and the site. And the building committee has already gone through that process of looking at every available site that could possibly fit the needs of a high school. MSBA recommends 25 acres, but that includes fields. We don't have another site that's 25 acres, or for that matter, even anything close. And so this building committee went through the various options and looked at the different criteria where we judged the feasibility of that site, and decided that there is no other site in town that really will be adequate for the high school. So that was decided too.
Okay. Are these 6 options that were presented on your website? Yep.
I don't know if they got loaded in today, but they will be up there.
They will be up there.
Yes. Everything that goes, pretty much everything that goes before the building committee gets on the Arlington High School building website. Okay. And it's Arlington High School building. It's ahsbuilding.org. And it's a fully developed website, and any new information that we get goes on that website. You can also sign up on the website to get alerts. And so if there's anything new that's come up, or they'll remind you about a particular forum, you can get that sent directly to your, to your email.
Okay.
Right?
By chance, is one of the options a new building in the front?
You'll be happy to know we did see one option sort of like that.
Okay. Just curious. Anybody else have any questions? Great. On to the, I'm sorry, Bill?
So you mentioned the 25 acres that was recommended by the MSBA as a minimum size, including fields for the new building.
That's what the recommended site is. Actually, the high school site's 22 acres with everything.
So if that doesn't exist within the parameters within Arlington, the town of Arlington, would it mean going outside the town?
No, the
So it
school will
just
be
means
built.
cutting it back?
It was looking at all the possible sites that could exist, such as Poets Corner, for example, things like that. Is there a site that a high school could be built on? And there were a lot of criteria that the committee looked at, one of which was public transportation, adequacy of the site. Does the town own the site? Because then you have the cost of buying the site too. So even privately held sites were considered.
The MSBA is making them go through the checklist. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay, on to
All
the
right.
budget.
All right, well, Jeff is the chair of the, not only the school committee, but the building committee, and I don't know, Jeff, you think I covered it all right?
I mean, we're really, all the alternative sites have been eliminated, and there's really two options, there's really two possibilities, a renovation addition or a new school, and that process is gonna be figured out over the next 2 months, 3 months.
All right. So, starting out with our current, your highlights, the school district has a lot of district goals, but if I was to say what is the major focus of the school district this year, it is improving the social emotional climate and cultures of our schools and classrooms, and also working on developing our own cultural competency. And this has been through professional development primarily, but it's also just something that everybody is very conscious about. One of the things that came out of this is we received a grant from AEF to support the district in our SEL initiatives, and one of the major ones this year is Youth Mental Health First Aid. This is a program that's actually going on all across the country and involves a day-long training for people and recognizing mental health issues and actually the kinds of actions that you should follow up with when you've identified there is some concern. Our goal is very ambitious for this year, and that is to have about 300 of our staff trained in this, which is significant because it's an all-day training, so we have to get substitutes. And our first, all administrators went through the first training, and we're now training trainers to help with that because not one person can reach out to that many people. And generally, the class size is around 20.
John?
Is that being coordinated at all with AYCC?
This particular initiative, not as much, but we do a lot with AYCC. They work with our schools.
No, it just seems that this would be a good connection with AYCC. I know that you do, and I think it's wonderful what you do with AYCC. But I was just thinking that this might be a...
I'd have to ask our director of social emotional learning and guidance if we've invited any of our counselors at AYCC to this. I don't know the answer to that. We've also seen more enrollment increases this year. Our October increase is 170 students. Since then, we've had more students. Principals always report to me, did you know that I had 3 more students added to our school last week? So it's a year-round change in enrollment, but what we do is we look at the number of students that are in our district October 1. The other thing that I think you particularly would want to know is that the FY18 budget is on budget with no expected deficits. What you see in this next graphic is the enrollment growth over time since 2013. We are now, if you can find this tiny print, I realize, 2017, 2018, and it's divided by elementary, middle, and high school. I think that that orange line that you see along the top of the bar, those are the forecasted numbers by the McKibben report that was done a few years ago. And then, of course, the top of the vertical bar is actually our enrollment number. There is a difference between our projections and McKibben's because the McKibben numbers do not include any out-of-district student placements. So we're always going to be a little bit higher than that orange bar, but one of the things that we're sort of curious about in the out years is that differential is growing a little bit there. And I think it may be that in another couple of years we might want to take another look at an update on that report. The way we calculate enrollment growth, we don't see the changes in enrollment until after they happen because it's basically that kind of an algorithm. It's really just a weighted average straight line projection, whereas McKibben's is a little bit more taking into consideration housing patterns and age of people in the district, and it's a much more broad and inclusive process. I won't read all of these with the vision for the Arlington Public Schools. These are a paraphrase of our overarching goals, but I do want to take the opportunity to just, when I get a chance to say what the mission of the Arlington Public Schools is, because this is why you're voting for this budget. It's what we're all about. And since it's on camera, I particularly would like to do that. The mission of the Arlington Public Schools is to educate students by promoting academic excellence, by empowering students to achieve their maximum potential, and by preparing students for responsible participation in an ever-changing world. The Arlington Public Schools are committed to helping every student achieve emotional, social, vocational, and academic success. And we take that very much to heart. On the next two slides here, you will see all the people who have been involved in the process of developing this budget. Certainly the school committee has as well, but these are the people who are in the district who have had a direct contribution. And I will also say it's not just limited to administrators. At our December meetings, the teachers union comes in and they go through a solicitation process at each school to understand, to be able to express to the school committee what they think the budget priorities should be. What is interesting in the last few years is that the priorities that comes through the administration side is often exactly the same, close to exactly the same what comes through from the Teachers Association. Budget timeline, you've gone over this in the past years. We begin this in September. It goes through many discussions. In December, our principals come and curriculum leaders come and express what they think is important to, what is important in the FY19 budget. And then the school committee takes the superintendent's budget and eventually on March 15th, which they did last week, voted as their budget after they've had input as well into this process. So what are our budget priorities and drivers for the FY19 budget? There are 5, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about each one of them. The 5 are these. Special education mandates, support for our high-need students, enrollment growth and class size mitigation, the Gibbs School implementation, and staff retention and compensation. So special education mandates, they include the funding for out-of-district placements. We look very carefully at what the cost will be for our current out-of-district placements and what we project might be our number of students will be out-of-district next year. And then we're conservative, and we try to be both conservative about it, but at the same time be very careful that we are also having sufficient funds to meet our obligations. There's also transportation associated with that, and then additional special education services. We have some students that do not go to the Arlington Public Schools, but they receive special education services. And those would include preschool students who are not in the preschool, but they could have services. So we also want to support our high-need students in the district, and to that end, we're asking for an increase next year of another social worker, a literacy coach to support teachers in differentiating their instruction, and also additional elementary teaching assistants. Our enrollment growth has prompted these particular asks. Arlington High School is asking, well, actually originally asked for something more like 7 or 8 FTEs, but they are going to need 5.4 FTEs in additional staff. How that gets distributed is really based on student choice when they select classes this year. Addison Middle School, as the larger numbers in the elementary move into the middle school, what we're doing next year is having the 7th grade have 4 7th grade clusters. This year we have 3.5, which means that when you have a half cluster, it means they have 2 teachers, and those 2 teachers are certified in the two subject areas. The following year, the plan is, again, as this rolls up the grades, that we will have 4 clusters in the 8th grade. So this is actually a 2-year plan. And then at the elementary level, we have 3 full-time teachers. Right now, we know at least 1, and increasingly we know 2. 2 of them are going to be placed next year. And we're hoping that that's sufficient. So in Gibbs implementation, when you now have 2 schools, there's a need for more faculty, for one thing, and then there's operating costs associated with that, and we have a budget for the Gibbs, and that is $1.3 million. We can talk more about that if you have any questions about it later. Then we are also need to include money for step and lane changes, and to cover contract agreements consistent with our existing contracts. And then other additions that have been added for next year are full-time TAs at the kindergarten level. Presently, we have half-time TAs. In a couple of classes which are larger or they have other needs, we have a few full-time. But for the most part, it's just half-time. And so this is money to have complete full-time TAs. Additionally, we need more money for course reimbursement. For many years, the amount of money we have in our contract, well, the money we had in the budget was sufficient to meet our contractual needs there. But the good news is a lot of our teachers are taking courses. It's wonderful, but on the other hand, what that also means is that we have more reimbursements we need to have funds for. Then one of the things that we found in our coordinated program review at the Department of Education, we need to actually sufficiently fund the need for mandated translation services. We have a custodian, and then additional funding for facility and operations. That has been flat for years, and what's been happening is that we're going over in that budget line item, and so this would I'd recognize that, in fact, the costs have gone up. All right, so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to John.
Thank you. So the next few slides sort of take us down what the totals are for FY19, starting with the first slide that shows you the totals for revenues to fund the budget and the sources of those revenues and the difference between FY18 and 19. And the FY19 is made up specifically from the formula used by the Long Range Planning Committee, which calls for a 3.5% increase on general education, a 7% increase on special education, a flat amount of just under $1 million that stems from when we moved from half-day paid kindergarten, or half-day kindergarten with paid full day, to full-day free kindergarten. There was some user fee revenue that would have been lost, that would be made up in Chapter 70, additional Chapter 70 money. So that carries forward year after year. And then there's a growth factor, which is made up of the additional students from one year to the next, multiplied by a factor of the per pupil cost. And this year, the added piece to that is Gibbs. Superintendent talked about implementation year of Gibbs. With opening Gibbs this year, there was $1.3 million added to the budget to cover the costs beyond just the people coming from Addison to Gibbs and bringing their stuff with them. There's things like a principal, custodians, a nurse, an added team, and bits and pieces of other FTEs. So that 1.3 gets added into the general education. So you'll see if you were to look, you'll see that the total increase is 7.34% year over year. That includes all funding sources. Just the town appropriation increase is just over 8%, almost 8.1%. If Gibbs if we weren't opening Gibbs this year, that would be more. That would be just under 6%, and with a total of 5.4%. So more in line with what it has been. Also, you'll see the note there about additional Chapter 70 funding not included in this total, as yet unknown. That's we can talk more about that later, but that's from when the governor's budget came out. The Chapter 70 projection for Arlington this year was $242,000 more than what was projected in the long-range plan. The long-range plan called for about $110,000 increase. The actual increase in the governor's budget is $353,000. There was conversation with the long-range planning committee to talk about what are the options with that, and what had been decided to date was that whatever the number was that comes from the next budget, which is the House Ways and Means, that's the number we'll use. Since we don't know that number, we didn't want to put anything on there. The next slide is just a visual to show you where the money comes from that funds our budget. You can see, almost 92% of it comes from the town, with smaller amounts coming from grants and revolving accounts, 3 and 5% between them. Following slide is just on the expense side, where we're spending the money. It's just a good visual to see that there's basically 3 big chunks that we're spending the money on. Secondary level, the elementary level, and special ed, and the other pieces are, obviously much smaller. These slides have been in for many years, so we just updated them with the latest information. The next slide is multi-year comparison by the categories. So there's a 5-year comparison on here, and I think the good visual on here to notice is that the 3 big buckets we just spoke about, special ed and secondary and elementary, you can see the slope of their growth is much steeper than the other areas, where the rest are maybe a little bit of a change, but mostly flat. And special ed, secondary, and elementary seem to be growing at a much higher rate. Obviously, with growing enrollment, that's what you expect. The next slide, special ed expenses, 4-year, with including next year in there. So what's on there? What you're looking at is in the bar graph. The bar graph is what the spending has been in each year, and the colors make up the 3 different categories. So the bottom 2 are the bottom one is circuit breaker, the next is grants, and then the top is town appropriation. And the line bar on there shows the percent increase year over year. So there's some totals on the bottom, and and identifies the percent year over year. But as you can see, the bottom two, circuit breaker and special ed grants, are pretty even throughout the years with small changes. So with the amount of growth over those 4 years being almost 30%, that's made up in the all has to be made up in the town appropriation.
So John, what is so it looks like the increase projected fiscal year 18 to fiscal year 19 is right about 7%?
Yes, about 1.5.
And how's your actual to budget this year for special ed?
We'll be very close. It won't be, well, as of right now, we're tracking right on with, I hate to even say it, but with, even with out-of-district placements. There's always fluctuations, there's always change, but total-wise, we have about $8 million in out-of-district placements, and we're tracking right in that area. Next year, we're expecting to be about 8.3 million.
Okay. John?
Can you give me some indication as to how we're doing with out-of-district as compared to people here in terms of special education? Is that increasing or decreasing? And can you give me some idea of the numbers at all?
Yes. The numbers out-of-district have been actually somewhat constant, but
I'm sorry.
it's been a little bit. It's been somewhat. Not I wouldn't say they're constant, but they're not growing as rapidly as the same percent as we're growing in enrollment. I think that would be a fair statement. We have roughly, I think, 108, 110, 111 now that are out of district. But that we had about 108, 107 last year. Keep in mind that some students age out as other students go there. And also one thing that's also happening, I can't begin to tell you the number of letters we get that tuitions are going, letters we get, the tuition are going up. They're going up, they go up every year. And
What does that mean, the tuition?
well, you could have a tuition at an out-of-district placement for $77,000, and maybe this year it might have been $70,000 last year. There is a lot of growth in the cost of out-of-district tuitions. So not only is the issue is how many students, but what's also going on with the tuitions that where the students are placed.
I mean, those are private school numbers,
Oh, yeah.
77,000.
Oh, yeah.
What's an example of? You mean someone's placed at a private school, for example?
There are private. We have students that are placed in the lab program, a collaborative program, and those tuitions can range in the high 40,000s to 60,000, and that's not transportation. It's also transportation costs.
Horrendously expensive, in my opinion. Especially given that, for example, the tuition that's paid to Minuteman, I'm not blaming you, I'm just, sort of commenting at the moment, is rather severely restricted, from out of district to in district as compared to this kind of thing.
You mean Minuteman placing students out of district? They don't place students, generally speaking, out of district. I mean, out of Minuteman, very few.
Yeah, out of district student who comes to Minuteman, but the state controls those costs pretty significantly.
Okay, you're just talking tuition students from outside of the Minuteman district, not special ed.
Yeah, okay. I understand.
Yeah.
But I mean, on average, can you give me a number for our own costs for a special student at Arlington High School as compared to an out-of-district student? Is there a way to do that?
Average student cost, perhaps, is that what you're asking?
No, average student cost for a
Special ed.
student at Arlington High
I
School
have that question too.
as compared to a special student out of district.
That wouldn't be that hard to do. I'm not sure I'd have the numbers off the top of my head. Roughly speaking, the number of students on an individual education plan is roughly around 14%, the state average was, I think, 17. So we're first of all under the state average in terms of the number of students who qualify for special education services. So if you apply that same percent to the number of students at Arlington High School, we could see what the special education budget was for Arlington High School, because we can do that and give you that cost per student. But I couldn't do it unless John can. I don't know. Oh. No.
I would want to guess.
You wouldn't want to go.
Well, we know what the per pupil cost is for students that go to Arlington. That's figured
Yeah.
out by the state in the reportings that we submit. But that also includes, that's in the just over $14,000 range. If you just did math it costs us about $8 million for our out-of-district placements. Is 111 kids are in the $70,000 range.
Aren't
If
you
that's
talk-
what you asked,
Aren't you talking apples and oranges
correct.
from the ones who are staying within the system versus the ones who are going outside of the system?
Yeah, that's the kind of number that I want. In other words, on a per pupil basis, in-house or out-of-house, what's the difference in cost for special students?
Okay, Paul,
I
Bill, do you
just
wanna-
think it's very important to know that the reason a student goes out of the district is that the cost that we have to pay is less than what it would cost for us to keep that student in the district and provide those services. It's important for you to understand it. Because of the special need of that particular student, probably hiring several full-time faculty people to meet that special need, okay? I'm talking hypothetically there. We don't send people out just to send people out. We do not have a unique program for those individuals. The cost, it's done. And correct me if I'm wrong, we've brought students back that we could provide
Yes.
in these programs, and that higher cost has been diminished.
Whenever we can, we develop programs that are cost effective within the school district. Because first of all, most parents would want their children to go to their local school or within their own school district. And they want them to be able to participate in the other extracurricular activities that are offered here. So that actually is the first choice of a lot of parents because of that sense of community. So it's, as Bill was saying, the issue is that we can't provide the kind of programming in a cost-effective way for students who are in out-of-district placements.
The reason I ask the question is because there are an awful lot of for-profit schools in the country who essentially are ripping off students.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard recently that some of this was going on in this area of special education. I was trying to get a handle on that in terms of your budget. Do you have any impression about that at all?
I think that all the schools that our students attend would not fall in that category. They're very reputable. And we also have students, quite a few of the students, I don't know what the percentage is. I bet it's close to a third to 40%, are in collaborative programs. And Arlington is part of a collaborative, the Lab Collaborative. And so but it's still not free because we're part of a collaborative. We still have to pay the expenses of it, and those tuitions are still, up in the $50,000 ranges, plus or minus. It's expensive because of it's expensive because of the ratio of teachers to students in those programs.
So is it fair to say that the impression that I had gotten was probably erroneous in terms of Arlington?
In terms of Arlington, I could say that's true. I can't speak beyond that. We have our students at very reputable places.
Thank you very much.
As long as we're on special ed, usually an interesting topic. Are there any other questions? Either budget or policy. So, Bill?
A special ed student, the same as a high needs student, are we?
That's a great question. The answer is yes, in terms of how it's categorized in the Department of Education when they give us back all of our data and based on demographics. But we would also identify students our high needs if they're not meeting our benchmark. So we have a lot of, increasingly a lot of part of our budget that go to support students meeting benchmarks. And they may require more small group instruction. In reading, for example, they may be in groups as small as even one-on-one, 2, 3, 4, 5. We don't usually have reading groups go much beyond 5. So they can be in small group instruction. We do, at the secondary level, for example, we have extra math classes for students that are struggling in math. We also have small group math classes. And a small group math class might be co-taught by a special education teacher and a regular education teacher, and the class is small. So you have 2 teachers in a class maybe of 12 students. So that's it's a very expensive part of the programming, but not all of that's even captured in the numbers that we have in this graph. Because we've been trying to have an apples-to-apples comparison for all of the, for the years, because otherwise you'd never be able to track what's happening. So for example, an example of co-taught, the special education teacher would be represented in this number, and because the students in that class are on an IEP. But the regular education teacher would not be. That would be in our general operating. So there's sometimes it's very hard, because there is some blurring in this area, to really have a true picture of what special education costs are, other than defining it as we have for these metrics.
Understand?
Yes.
Grant?
Yeah, very much appreciate how much you can vary and hard. But hard data, we do have averages, and they represent what they do. So I'm trying to get a little apples to apples here. So, not trying to lead you, but to help me. So we have about 14% of the student population is on an IEP, special ed.
14.6.
14.6, okay.
14.6, okay, 15 or so. How many students are there in the school? 6,000 something?
In classrooms in Arlington, there are about just shy of 5,600, and then the additional students are out of district placement.
Okay, but wouldn't all of those people are Arlington students? They just go, but they're in our budget, but even though they don't go to school, but they're still a per student cost.
Right, so if we were to take all the students that we're fiscally responsible for, that would be closer to 5,700 students.
Okay. And so 14% of those are on an IEP, and it sounds like about 1 in 8 has to be out of district, about.
That's about percent-wise, that's about.
Is that right? So the average cost of spending of a sped student out of district is 70,000. It's hard to hear some of this. That's what they say. 70,000
In the 70s, yeah.
And what would be the in-school average cost for a special ed student?
That's what the question was trying to. We maybe should have anticipated that question. We would have to, basically take the special ed budget and divide it by the number of students that we have. It's in the 800s, and give you the cost per student.
See, and that's what helped me, because
yeah, we can define that.
That's the in-school cost, and it also probably helped our understanding that we're trying to save money when we send it out of district. I think was Bill's point on that. So we actually save money when we put it out of district. So, but it's also important, I think, to understand. So, because 86% is on the general education, and that would be, I don't know, 14,000. What's the average student cost for the general education? That would be about 86% of the.
It's the state.
85.
The state has it at just over 14,000.
14,000.
So for a student with an IEP with services is going to be higher than that.
Right. And that's
But is it
exactly-
going to be double that? I don't believe it would be as high as double that. Would you have an estimate, John?
I don't, I'm just
Yeah,
trying
we,
to figure
well,
out
we
what
can
the
get you that number.
That would be
for
a
sure.
useful number to make some sort of
Mhm.
comparison, also compare to what it would cost in district and out of district, and the difference between them. So that would be helpful.
It's, I can tell you that it's thousands of dollars difference. I mean, we're talking when a student is out of district, an average tuition of 70,000 plus another 8,000 for transportation, 10,000, depends on really where they're going. An in-district education doesn't even begin to equal the cost of that.
Sure, sure. But it'd be good to have that.
We can get that for you for sure.
But I
Yeah,
mean,
that's a good
you
question.
could have a student with an individual plan that just needs some reading
Hmm?
Absolutely.
Right.
Mhm.
or some math help.
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
Grant, you
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, Stephen?
Yeah, thank you. It's the question on, since we're on special ed, this year in the budget book, you had combined special ed and interventions as summarize the total spent on each. Do you see the interventions, the services, whether it's guidance or other aspects, becoming part of special ed in the future? Is that why this is now being combined for presentation purposes?
We don't combine the two because of what we've tried to have an agreement about in terms of what is considered special education costs in terms of how we report it to the state. Right.
I think I think some of the changes we made in the budget schedules that were shared, and one of them was that there were separate reports for. I think there were separate reports, or there may have been two separate and one combined, to combine interventions and special ed because it addresses mostly all of our high need students in one report. We still broke it out in a couple different places and in the presentation because that's historically how we've talked about it. We want to be consistent, but I think as you'll hear further on in the slides, as we move towards updating our budget book, I think it would probably gear towards the other way. Not necessarily that they're going to be combined.
Keeping it
into-
separate.
Well, I think we need to keep them separate, or you're not going to be able to have a trend lines,
You know,
or you create a new baseline.
I saw the Schedule 7 in your budget book, and I saw a combined number of 27 million.
Mhm.
And I know you have special ed separated elsewhere, but I was curious why the $27 million figure has any significance if it's two separate categories. And I know it's the interventions are designed to just as it's defined, to
Yep.
perhaps save special ed dollars later because there are things that can be done ahead of time before a student may have to enter into special ed services.
I don't want to misspeak. I meant that they would be, that we sort of see them as combined, but would still continue to break out special ed for reporting purposes.
Okay,
but
yeah.
Right.
Just for Schedule 7
Right.
purposes, I guess.
So,
Okay.
so an intervention class, say at the middle school, that's a math intervention class. In that class, there could be half the class that have that on their grid in their an individual education plan, and there could be students in there that do not receive are not on an IEP. So we don't even though that those students, that's a mandated resource for those students on the IEP. We don't count that in special education costs, and that's where that gray area is. We just haven't been over the years.
Okay. And just, these tables are actually very helpful this year. For the past 3 years, I've had questions on different treatment of special education costs. So if I look at page 10, slide 19, special education expense is $21.9 million. And then on the next page, page 21, special education expense in total is $23.4 million. And the difference there is grants for
Yes.
special education.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that that was presented because I hadn't seen that before, but I'm wondering if if you're spending the grant money within a program, which you are, because the program summary comes up to 23.4, I don't know if it's significant to still report out grants. I think as a reader, I'd rather see what you're spending, whether the source is from a grant or whether it's from the town appropriation, because to me, special ed's 23.4 million, not 21.9. So I appreciate the additional information, but I'm wondering if that's something that the total expense can be reported rather than breaking out the grants in the future.
I think it definitely will, and I think the reason it's still in there with grants in there is because it was already in the materials we shared.
Okay.
It wasn't until after we produced the same materials that had been being produced that we were able to break out the grants the way we needed to. So I think the ones that have grants separate on the expense side will go away and look more like just the 7 categories.
Thank you.
The
And
6
you
categories.
appreciate it, and I'm glad, because I never got an answer to that, so I appreciate that.
Okay, are there any other questions just on special education? Okay. Onward.
Okay, so the next slide was just a breakdown of the total, increase in revenue, and then what the categories were. And again, the reason this slide doesn't match the ones above it in the specific categories is because this was already in the schedules we shared, and it's in the superintendent's budget message. So, for some consistency, we have it in there. You'll see that the Gibbs, we've talked about what makes up the Gibbs. The salary piece is what we talked about is collective bargaining agreement. The fixed ed mandates is basically special ed and the translation piece. Special ed, out of district transportation, out of district tuition, transportation services, and also the mandated translations piece. That's what makes up that dollar amount, and then the other is just everything else that was on the list. It was in the book this way, so I wanted to make sure we were consistent.
Can you go through what are the, not in detail, but the main categories of funds for the Gibbs? The $1.3 million, general speaking.
Well, generally speaking, it's mostly personnel. In terms of something to be operating, there's $80,000 in the operating budget, and that was after some time thinking about that. But basically, it is all personnel. Some of it's small pieces, because once you have somebody, for example, with occupational therapy that might be at a point, I don't want to go into that level of detail, but it's basically personnel. And then there are some costs that you have just by the virtue you have a new school, like a principal cost. Actually, secretary, we decided not to increase in secretarial service, so we had 3 secretaries at Odison, and between the 2 buildings, there will still be 3. But custodial, that has to increase. So there are costs that are just by virtue of the fact you have a new building that's there.
Okay. Now, I mean, I assume, well, like the secretary, some got transferred from the Odison.
Yes, actually someone is retired and will be refilling the position, but in terms of money, there's 3 positions. 2 remain at Odison, 1 goes to Gibbs.
Okay.
The next slide we talked about earlier in the long-range planning committee about any additional Chapter 70. So what the school committee, what we were able to present to the school committee at the last meeting was just what the administration's priority list would be of any level of funding that were to be an increase. So you'll see that there's 2 priority lists there, and that the first one just adds up to what the dollar amount in the governor's budget was, because we needed something to aim at, so that's where we started. And then beyond that is, we just went up to a certain number that, hopefully it won't be that high, but if it isn't, they're listed in priority order and was presented to the school committee. You can see, I won't read them, but there are some special ed positions for the preschool, given the amount of students who present with either come from early intervention or parent referrals that present a need for a program. We just don't have enough seats for it in our preschool program here. There's some teacher FTEs given K-12, worrying about after we get course enrollment numbers back that we may need something there, a large class size TA, which is a TA that would go into a room that their class size is beyond what the optimum level that the school committee guidelines are for that specific grade. A math coach at the elementary level to sort of round off our program. It's been a multi-year project to get one dedicated at each school, not a full-time, but a person dedicated at each school, and then some increase in the summer professional development program, which is in high demand for our teachers and has the requests have outpaced what we've had for funding for the past few years. The list beyond that you can see was assistant principals, school nurse, counselor. So some of this stuff may be required. It may turn out that we need to have a counselor at Artisan or a nurse, and part of that would have to come out of the FTEs that we have for the K-12, and that's why we're not identifying it, because right now we don't know exactly what it's going to be, but we wanted to make sure we accounted for it. And the last slide is just you know, what we're doing, how we're planning for the future. For enrollment growth, you know, we're very thankful for the town, obviously, to continue to build spaces and for us to use every nook and cranny we can. But we're continuing to monitor the our projections as they compare to the McKibben projections, which this year we have on our October report that we use for the long-range planning that counts kids that we're fiscally responsible for, was 5822, which was 111 more than McKibben, who doesn't include out-of-district. So right now we're right on, but we're going to continue to monitor that. As the superintendent mentioned, the gap on that chart showed widening as it went out, which makes sense because ours is a formula, a weighted average formula that will probably grow, and theirs was more of a demographic study that was really done for a space needs analysis for how many classrooms are we going to need. So it doesn't take into account all the kids we're fiscally responsible for. So I think we may see that we're going to probably need to update the McKibben report if we do see that there's a discrepancy, and if the gap gets larger and we're beyond what they're and even beyond what we're estimating, then I think we'd probably look to update that. In the financial planning area, where we talked a little bit about a new budget book, the plan from the budget subcommittee was to charge the business office with over the next few years to change the budget format we used to have to be geared towards using the meritorious budget award format that is put out by MASBO and ASBO. That's the School Business Managers Association. There's a pretty detailed guideline that they put out, or a template. This year we took some very, very baby steps. The budget book isn't completed yet, but we just took some baby steps towards getting there, but we plan on to continue to do that and to continue to evolve that book so it's more helpful to people. There'll be more narrative, there'll be more charts. It won't just be one spreadsheet after the other, and if you don't know what you're looking for, it'll be harder to find. We've also been charged by the Budget Subcommittee and Long Range Planning Committee to create a multi-year financial plan, sort of like the Long Range Planning has their 5-year plan. I think ours, you know, we haven't decided anything yet, but we can envision ours, the revenue side of ours, matching that, and then the expense side matching what we think our needs are, and it will give us an idea of the gap between what we think the available revenues are, if there is a gap, and what our plans are. So that will be starting fairly soon, just after we get through the budget season. That's sort of our next financial planning project. In the technology area, we're entering, next year will be the last year of the last 5-year technology plan. There's a group that's working on updating that technology plan, and right now the capital budget funds $400,000 for replacements of end user devices. We have roughly 5,600 of them, and our replacement plan, which called for to be hopefully around 4-year cycle, is more like a 5-year cycle. amount of devices we have, and that seems logical. That team is not only just looking at how many devices we need, but what are we using them for, what do we see us using them for in the future, and as anyone can probably guess, after 5 years, technology's changed quite a bit, so it's a good time for that group to be together. That group includes the not just the technology folks, like the fixed break folks and the network people, but it also includes the tech integration people, which are technology coaches who help to teachers. It will include, so teacher will include administrators, so it'll be a big group that's going to be working hard on that, and they'll be looking to sort of create the playbook for what we're going to do technology-wise going forward, and that will obviously go to Capital and come to you folks. And it's pretty good. Last piece.
All right, curriculum changes that we're seeing in the future. One thing that is changing, and that they haven't been entirely approved yet, for the new social studies framework. What this is going to mean is curriculum materials, more professional development, because I think what's going to end up happening is having some realignment as to where certain topics are going to be taught. Right now, the plan is to have civics be an 8th grade topic, which means that this really does realign lots of things. So that's coming up on the horizon. The other, this is a really important one in our state, and this is computer science. Arlington has actually been somewhat out there in the lead in some districts in terms of the work we're trying to do in our schools to begin coding at very young ages. And right now we have a 6th grade program which is called Digital Media Literacy, but it's a program that not only looks at a lot of the ethics around this, but it also is, again, an introduction to computer science. We're expanding that next year in the 7th grade and the 8th grade at elective level, but we're thinking it needs to have more penetration into our student body. At the high school, we have a fairly robust computer science program, which is just growing all the time. And that's actually going to be another issue with technology in terms of the kind of hardware that we have. We're now, I think, in our 4th year of our computer science lab, but the kind of computers that you need for this type of program do need to be on a tighter rotation schedule than, say, computers or iPads that may be in the 2nd grade, for example. So we try to differentiate that a bit. But this is really important, I think, not for the future of Massachusetts, for sure, because one of the major industries of our Commonwealth is our educated population, and how technologically educated that population is. It's certainly one of the things that draws a lot of companies to Massachusetts, and it really is our future. Whether it's in the biomedical field, or as we see, GE, or we see Amazon. So right now there are a lot of job openings in fields where they can't find enough people. And if that's true in Massachusetts, that's true across the country. So I feel our job in public schools is to really step this up. And of course, there are a lot of complexities to this because we have a limited school day, and we have a lot of mandates in terms of courses and things that need to be taught. So there's challenges in terms of requirements upon us, and then there's also the challenge of the funding. And another very important challenge is finding people to teach it, because the teacher's salary is not even close to being competitive with the industry. And so that's just a general challenge that we're facing, I think, in school districts going the next few years.
Alan?
Just regarding the technology and coding, even in Massachusetts, there's still a large gender inequity. And companies like Microsoft and WorkBar, Venture Cafe, and Girls Who Code, things like that, have a lot of initiatives to increase the number of women going into coding? Is there any coordination in the programs or special encouragement for women to get into coding?
Well, up until high school, it's not an elective, or at least through 6th grade. I mean, all students take it, this course, or at least, I shouldn't say all. Sometimes students have support services. I think about roughly 88% of the 6th grade will take it. But when it starts getting to 7th and 8th, it's going to be elective. And then, of course, high school is elective. There has been, by the department chair, the math department chair, and also the person who teaches computer programming at the high school, computer science at the high school, to reach out and bring girls into it. But is there an imbalance? Yes, there still is an imbalance in our computer science classes. But and that's a goal in there. Same thing with robotics. We'd like to see more young women being interested in that.
So there are a lot of industry programs promoting that. I didn't know if there was any coordination. Like Microsoft at Burlington Mall has a lot of girls who code events, things like that. But I don't know if they could augment what's going on in the schools.
We've reached, well, we have, multi districts have reached out to look at ways that we can involve corporations and universities in supporting us. And because we all may be in the situation that you could have a great computer science teacher, but they leave, how do you keep managing that program? And so how can we as districts maybe do blended classes so that a teacher, say in Arlington, can also have students in Belmont and Lexington and so forth. So we're really taking that up with earnest because this is really important. And what might be nice is down the road is teacher salaries grow at the same rate as technology salaries, but that's probably not going to happen. But that is a challenge. Yeah.
Have you, Arlington is a bit of an MIT haven, and a lot of people retiring, boomers are retiring. Have you thought of trying to get some of those retirees back into teaching computer science?
Have definitely thought about that. And there's some issues around certification, so there's a lot of things that the Department of Education has to help us out with too, in that whole piece as well. But yes, I think that is actually one of the things that could be one of the solutions down the road, second careers for people, absolutely. And just having people come in and tell about their experiences. In fact, one thing I want to say about the technology plan, because Arlington is rich with a lot of people in this area and who are on the technology advisory committee for the chief technology officer, we're also in the development of this technology plan going to be reaching out to them for their views in terms of what this looks like in the industry today.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking of a friend of mine who was a computer teacher at MIT, and he just retired. And he's probably bored by now.
Hey, pass his name on to me.
Okay, I guess we could open up to any issues that, Grant? John?
One last thing back to the special ed. So the 21.9 plus grant, 23.4 million, that includes costs for in-school, in-district, and out-of-district, right? Total cost.
Correct.
Oh, great. All right, thanks. That was all.
John?
Just a couple of questions about Metco. I'm looking through your proposed budget. I don't know if anything's changed with the final budget, but I noticed that for the first time in a number of years, there's no increase in the Metco grant amount from last year's budget. And I'm just wondering, could you explain how that number is determined? Is it a formulaic based on number of Metco students, or is that a number that's built up and then requested?
it is directly related to the number of students you have. That money, the money for Metco program comes through the Department of Education, but it is something that's voted on by the legislature. And it's in two parts. There's a per pupil, and there's also the cost for transportation. Until actually the last couple of years, those two funds could not be intermingled. But there's a little bit of more fungibility, which is good, because for example, if we wanted to have a late bus and we didn't have transportation money, where would we get it? But right now, it has been fairly level funded. I don't know, there was an effort just recently to lobby to get more money for Metco next year. But until I think the budget is passed, we won't know. Maybe with the House Ways and Means budget coming out, we'll know better.
Now, Metco's an offset item, isn't it? In other words, it goes directly to you?
Yes.
Off the cherry sheet? Yep.
Yes.
I also noticed that one of the, and I really appreciated this chart where you're showing what's being funded, what's being partially funded, and what's not being funded in this in the FY19 budget. And I noticed that one of the things not being funded was the late bus for Metco. And what is the late bus?
So the request was from beyond.
Yeah. Well, there's the late bus is a bus around 6 o'clock, so they can be part of practices. We were able to fund it this year, and I'm hoping that we can fund it next year, because I think it's really important for our students to be able to participate. But there's another bus that's called the late bus too. So some days the bus picks up at the end of the school day, but then 2 days a week the bus is I think at 3:15 and 3:30. It's all the high school students and the middle school students ride in the same bus. So it's a little bit later so they can get extra help.
So I'm just looking at it here. It says one of the unfunded items is transportation, Metco late bus for $12,500.
Right.
Is that the 6 o'clock bus?
Yes. Yes.
So as of right now, there's no provision for a late bus, Metco late bus.
There is, but at the same, we have not. The ask was to enhance it, to have it more often, and to provide more passes for people to take MBTA. But this.
So there will continue to be a late bus.
We hope to be. We were able to fund it. It's being funded right now. But initially we thought we were only going to be able to fund it through February, but we have been. But we'd like to do more. We've talked about, is there any way to coordinate with some other towns to do this? And it's really, that's a tough one. You think it's a good idea until you get down into the details of it. But right now, students either go on the bus after school, or they get an MBTA pass. So, in order to to make the dollars stretch more, so it's more enhancements in that respect. But if we could have more opportunities for that and have it be very clear that it's funded through the whole year, that would be optimal. And maybe the legislature is going to give more money. That's a possibility. There's certainly some legislators that are really advocating for that. And but their job is the same job we have at a micro level. They're trying to fund all these different things and cover everything, and what gets the priority this year.
Thank you.
Okay, John?
My calculations are that you have 6,000 students this year, and the cost to the town is $66 million, which means that the cost to taxpayers is like $11,000 per student. Given the quality of Arlington schools, which is quite high, and that cost, we have a very effective cost benefit ratio, benefit to cost ratio. So I want to compliment you
Oh, thanks, John.
and the school committee on it.
Don't do that, John. She'll want to raise next time.
Ellen doesn't like me to say that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? David and then Peter.
When are your contracts up with your employees?
August. We're in negotiations right now with the teachers union and AAA and,
Unit C?
pardon?
They used to call it Unit C.
Unit C is a year out. It's our smaller food service and bus driver. I think bus driver is there this year. Is it?
I thought it was just the two.
Anyway, the administrators union and the teachers union are in current negotiations.
Are you coordinating your efforts with those of the town?
Absolutely.
Okay, Peter.
Are there any plans to improve the security in the high school doors?
Yes, I can answer that. There is, and it starts in April. And I just have an email from David that states that in my hand, if you want to see it.
Excellent.
It came up in our budget, so that's why you're thinking, wow, that's out of left field. It actually isn't.
If we could just get the kids to stop propping them open.
That's
Right.
exactly what David Good told us.
Yes.
Yes. Yes,
You have to-
that's, when the new school is online, they will be all alarmed and we will know if a door is open. And there'll be a camera there to say, why is it open?
So
They are starting that effort in April to put in some temporary cameras that can be reused and moved. And that project will start this April. And it is to last through until the new school is built. It may not create any more solutions, it'll just give us more information.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Brian.
How many employees are there in the school in total?
There's 816 FTE, so there's headcount wise, it's closer to that 900, over 850.
And is it possible, should ask for this before, it doesn't matter, just I'm curious. Upon pupil, a list of schools by pupil and basically what the capacity is, because we were talking a long time ago about all this, as which schools were busting out and which aren't, I assume all of them at this point?
Well, thanks to Arlington, we're in a good spot right now with these additional classrooms at Thompson. That's really helped immensely. The additional ones at Hardy. Stratton has always had a little bit of extra capacity. That's where we had our schools when we were doing other constructions. Dallin has no, unless you give up all the music rooms or remove a special education program at Dallin, Brackett, completely, Bishop, they're completely used. There's no additional classrooms. There's one or two, maybe two or three actually, but not really at Pierce. And in fact, Pierce, that third classroom that I was saying 2 or 3 is last year we had a surprise at Pierce, totally not predicted, of getting 3 kindergartens when we've had 2 for, seems like, for a decade. I don't know if that's a new trend at Pierce or not. So we're really, when I can count the individual classrooms, I mean that says a lot right there of how, that are not being used right now as classrooms. They're being used, but they're not necessarily being, they could be repurposed for a classroom.
And lastly, I remember we also had a discussion about, is the population growth coming through kindergarten and moving up all the way through? Or is there, because if you look around town, the houses are snapped up in seconds. So is it from people, from moving into town with more kids than people leaving town that may be empty nesters at that point?
Mm-hmm.
What's the anticipated growth?
The anticipated growth, we're going to go over 6,000 in the next couple of years. I think we'll probably not hit 7 But that's why we're thinking about we should maybe take another look down the road at what happens. We have a lot of students moving in throughout the whole year. Right now our elementary classes, the lower grades are right around 500, over 500, whereas our high school classes are in the low 300s. That gives you the difference right there. The changeover is happening at Addison right now. Those classes are moving. For example, the Gibbs opening class next year will be somewhere between 460 and 470.
And that's just the 6th grade, right?
That's just the 6th grade. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You know, the interesting thing is if you go back to 1970, we had 10,000 students. Amazing. Thank God we don't have to take care of that many right now. Other questions? Stephen?
Yeah, just a question on fees. I see that the estimates for revenue next year are the same as this past year. I know there's been some discussion on possibly changing the athletic fee structure, but does this budget assume whatever fees are in place will be in place for next year? In the same fashion, I guess that would be both for athletic and for music.
We are looking. Probably the short answer to that is probably they will be, though, is something that we have been thinking about, is whether what we should do about buses, the fees for the music program. We're not making any changes. There's been some discussion about athletic fees, but we're probably not going to do anything about that right now. But that is something that we need to take another look at. Though in athletic fees, that might be a budget neutral, because it's just sort of a readjustment. But I do think we need to take a look at our bus fees. They have been the same for 10 years, and yet our costs continue to go up.
And thank you for that answer. Just a question on one of your budget priorities is additional funding for facilities, and I'm just wondering, we're a couple of years into a facilities department in town. From the school department's perspective, how's it working, and do you see additional? I think that the hope is there'll be coordination between a facilities director and the needs of all town buildings. But how has it gone so far?
I think it's gone terrifically, and we can both, you know, we have, well, our new director is just starting, but certainly with Ruthie Bennett was a great partnership. I had a every other week regular meeting with her, and I hope that will continue, because you can deal with a lot of the issues. We began a process of really trying to identify our summer projects to meet the dollars we had. Back in February, we had a lot more planning. The school dude that we use now, it keeps is able to manage the requests, because when you get these older buildings, there's constant. Now, some people might say it's not, perhaps not getting the response they need as fast as they would like it, and I think that might be a very valid thing. But at the same time, it's very much more managed than it had been. I think our poor facilities department, they just tried to do, they were always running every which way to manage the crisis of the moment. And I think we're getting to the point where we can manage the crisis of the moment and have a more planful management of facilities going out. So that is working out, I think that's working out really well.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there other questions on any topic for the schools? This is the only time of year you get her. Okay. Just to sort of go through this, John went through it. So the base budget for the town appropriation I'm talking about now is $65,860,321. Now, in addition, the long-range planning committee manager, et cetera, and superintendent are recommending that if the House Ways and Means Committee coming out on April 11th matches what the governor has recommended, that we add an additional $241,998 for a total town appropriation of $66,102,319. If the number from House Ways and Means comes in lower than the governor, then that would be the number. But I don't expect that in an election year on that. So does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
And does any member of the school committee like to have anything to say, to add to this?
Thank you.
Or do you all want to get home before the snow? Okay, thank you very much.
We may want to see you in the fall. You may get to see us again in the fall. So, but as we evolve this 5-year budget plan, we may want to meet with you in the fall and go over that.
We're always available.
Great.
Okay, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Do you know George Koser?
No.
Name strike a bell?
No.
He's the MIT professor who just retired.
Oh.
And he's been involved in town government for a long time, but not over the last bunch of years. So anyway, I'll talk to him.
Okay. All right. And I would have him be in touch with our director of math. It's in that department.
Good luck in the next few hours, Kathy.
Thank
Okay.
you, Jeff.
John,
Yes, sir.
did great.
Thank you. Thanks for taking it easy on the new guy.
Okay. A couple other things. Carolyn, you're talking to the manager's office about the IT budget and the cameras and all that thing, because I got some different feedback from there. So if you could touch bases and straighten that out, that'd be great. Or somewhat different feedback. Okay, now you all got Sandy Pooler's memo on the parking budget. Now we'll deal with this, but I just want everybody to read it. We'll deal with it on Monday. Who is the parking budget? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sandy's number for offset, you'll notice, is $47,126. When we voted the parking budget, I think we only had the offset of $35,826. So, I mean, you don't have to look at it now. We can, if that's the case, we can bring that budget and revote it on Monday. But if you could check that out with him.
Okay.
And, you know, if he wants to throw another $11,000 into it, that's fine. So read the parking budget and we'll take care of that on Monday. Arts and culture. So everybody should have the arts and culture memo. I didn't copy the whole thing, but I think especially, you know, look at the different budgets. Look at the 17 budget, look at the 18 budget, look at the proposed 19 budget, and then look at the director's, what she's planning to do with the consultant. Go through the whole thing and then why don't you, Liz, invite them to come in?
Monday,
Yeah, 7:30 on Monday.
7:30.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions, and then we'll vote to see, you know, because it's gone from $4,000 to $25,000 to $40,000, and maybe that needs to be tampered down a little bit, or maybe you think it's a great idea. But we need to, you know, we need to look at this. Carolyn?
Look at where the money is located.
Well, you know, look at what they're doing. Read the whole thing. I just copied a few pages, but read the whole thing and see what you think. I think, you know, consider the growth of the budget. And globally, you know, when you're talking a $150 million budget, $5,000 or $10,000 is not going to break the bank. On the other hand, is this a core service of the town? And, you know, should all new monies be going to core services? Maybe, maybe not. But anyway, that's sort of our discussion and vote on Monday. So please look at that. Peter?
Could I add something to that?
Sure.
Another thing to look at is the action plan at the Selectmen of on Arts and Culture, that the Selectmen approved last year. It fully supports what the ACAC people have proposed.
Yep. I think the, you know, one thing I'd like to see is it keeps saying, well, this is all going to benefit the economy and the restaurants and all this stuff, but we never seem to get that much support from it. I think most restaurants in Arlington, you know, get by on a very slim margin already, so maybe they just can't. And once you get past to two, you know, a couple of big supporters of the town, I won't mention their names, but I think you know who they are, you don't get much from maybe some of the rest. So I don't know if that's a factor or not. Bill?
Yeah, one of the things that really kind of stood out for me, and I want to support the arts and culture like probably anybody does, is this idea that I got the sense that they need to have this kind of grandiose state-of-the-art website, and the idea that if we build it, they will come and use it. And maybe if we could just back that down a little bit and start out more slowly and see if it's more demand for it rather than supply, that we don't have to jump up, you know, to the big numbers right away.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking through the 19 budget. They've got about $10,000 set aside for matching. You know, they've got almost $8,500 for website maintenance and coordinator and stuff like that. So, like I said, read through the whole thing, think about it, put it in the general perspective, and then we'll discuss this on Monday. Okay, school budget. Now, I guess what I do is, you know, the total recommendation, I guess I put, if we get a motion in three parts, the base budget of 65,860, 321, which is in your budget. If the House Ways and Means Committee comes up with matches the governor, which in an election year I would expect they would, of 241,998, and then if for a total appropriation, this is just the town appropriation of 66,102,319, and then authorize Alan and myself to adjust that top number if the House Ways and Means comes in at a lower level, you know, to that lower level. So with that request, I throw it open to any discussion or a motion.
I move that we accept the school department or Arlington Public Schools budget at 66,102,319. Any seconds?
Second.
Now, is that not contingent on the House Ways and Means?
Contingent, that's a friendly amendment. Contingent on the House Ways and Means approval of the recommendation of an additional 241,998.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Thoughts on the school budget, the presentation, the vote? Okay, all those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous.
Could you say the numbers again, please, Carol?
Okay, so the base number is 65,860, 321, plus 241,998 if the House Ways and Means Committee matches the governor, for a total of 66,102,319.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes care of the schools. And how much time did we discuss? Over a couple of small items in one of the budgets, but that's the way it is. Okay. How about I know the insurance budget is still outstanding, waiting for the numbers. I guess the GIC was really slow in getting out the numbers this year. How about the pensions?
Yes.
Retirement. Page 158.
158, and then, you want to do the warrant articles too?
Uh,
That we couldn't do the other day because I needed to check on the 300,000.
I think we did it, but we were asking you to confirm it.
And I confirmed it.
Okay,
Approved?
so the OPEB money is set.
It's set.
Great.
Okay. So for retirement, you will see at page 158, there is no salaries paid detail attached to it. What I'm handing out now is not related to retirement. That's the reclass. But if you look at 158, there's no salary detail page, and the reason is because the salaries are not paid by the town, they're paid by the fund. And so if you look at the numbers, the retirement costs are costs of running the fund. And they're up 619,296 because we have the increase set at 5.5% each year going forward from now until 2036. And we have to have the fund fully funded by 2040. And we've given ourselves that 3 to 4 year leeway in case something else goes wrong. We originally had told the pension fund and the board for Arlington that we would go up to 6%, and a couple of years ago we realized we could come down to 5.5, which would give us more money for things like schools, which is why we're at 5.5 and not 6%. And so I move that we accept the budget as is for $10,765,545.
Now, the offsets are primarily water and sewer?
I didn't get that.
Grant?
Yes.
Yep, okay.
Bookmark that for when we present, by the way, because that's a good concept. Did we also, was that what we followed up before where you said that they split? There was another offset we did last time where you were going to get an accounting
And I'm
for.
going to get this, yeah.
Okay. So I'm sort of priming the pumps for the conceptual when we explain the offset for water and sewer.
Okay.
Where they come from.
Okay, so the recommendation is $10,765,545. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, questions, discussion? Okay,
Question.
Peter?
What, Carolyn, what'd you say the rate we're using now? Is it still 5.5 or?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, motion is for 10,765,545. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, I don't have to look back anymore. Okay, unanimous, 321. Okay, that's done. Insurance we'll do on Monday. IT, Planning and Community Development we'll do on Monday.
So you ended up with a different.
Well, why don't we talk about it
Yeah,
afterwards?
we can talk, yeah.
Okay. Reserve fund.
Monday,
I'm sorry?
I'm waiting for some information back from Sandy Cooper. Develop a spreadsheet for a fuller explanation.
Okay.
Money going in, money coming out. Would you email Charlie on that as well? Because I think he had some ideas on it. This was his idea. Huh? This was his idea. Okay, that's what I was just making.
Okay. Water and sewer.
Sewer and water, we do it Monday.
Okay.
Planning on Monday.
What? Sewer.
Sewer when we do it, we'll see, that's if they haven't listed it, I don't know. See it first, then we'll.
Okay, so just to say, what I'm hoping for is that we can wrap up on Monday. You know, that's my goal. If you have any questions, you have any issues. So we still need also to do rec on the rink. Now we've done Council on Aging and the youth services, those are done.
Yes.
So the rink and the recreation on Monday. And that should be it. So Alan and Peter, could you just confirm that we just have those left? IT, Planning and Community Development, Insurance, Reserve Fund, Water, Sewer, Rec, and Rink. You don't tell me now, but just make sure I haven't missed anything. So go through your records. Okay, in that case, position reclassification.
Okay, so you have one of those crazy sheets in front of you that I give you each year. And you ask, what is reclass? So reclassification happens when any position within the town, it's determined that that person is doing more work than their current grade and step are set at. And usually what happens is either the department head or the individual involved come before the human resources and ask to do a reclassification of a job. And they present their case based on you know, the information of the job, the comparison to maybe other people within their department or other departments, to request an increase often in grade and or step. Sometimes it's outside of grade and step for lots of different reasons. And what you have in front of you, the first page is the reclassification of the job itself. The second page is which positions are being added. And then the third page, and it's a double-sided paper. And the third page is which jobs are being completely deleted from the system. And there are often a few cases where you have something that's added where something isn't deleted or reclassified. And we have 2 of those this year. And in other cases, you have something that's just deleted. The department has decided they don't need that position anymore. And it's not associated with the reclassification. And if you want me to go through them, I can. But Karen and I went over all of them and checked the matchings, and she redid the page because one of the numbers was off. We figured out. And so I move that we accept the reclassification as is.
Okay, now, okay, we're talking page 1 right now. Do you want to take them one at a time? Why don't we take them one at a time? How many positions applied for, how many people applied for reclassification, and how many were turned down?
No one was turned down this year. There were 2 people appealed, and their appeals were, they were still reclassified, but not necessarily where they wanted them.
Okay, so.
Karen?
Yes?
Why are 2 of these reclasses, there's no dollar amount?
Because their salary doesn't change. So what may be happening is their salary reflects a certain level, but we don't actually have to pay them any more money. Yeah.
And so what is the purpose of the reclassification?
It's to demonstrate the workload compared to what the work that they're doing. Oftentimes that can happen when somebody changes jobs. So someone may come from one department into another. We may decide to move someone into a job and change their title. But because they were making more at the, a certain amount at their other job in town, the grade and the whatnot is set, but their salary doesn't increase because they were already up there. Does that make sense?
But it can increase.
It can increase, and that's why you see values on this first page. Those are increases in their salary. And that will appear here as part of an article rather than in the budget book, because, for a number of reasons. It makes it easier, for one.
Okay. Other questions? So youth services had better increase their
So
revenue.
Okay, so the reason youth services, if you look, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 youth services positions who has more reclassification at a higher level and has significant salary increases. And the reason for that is that it is a revenue generating department, and they are doing their own insurance management. And as a clinician who deals with insurance for people from lots of different insurance companies, I can assure you that that takes an immense amount of work. You need to know when your patient walks in the door what their insurance is. You need to know what that insurance policy, specific insurance policy, is offering that person. And some insurance policies offer a time limit of 60 days. That used to be Blue Cross Blue Shield's version. So you had to get shoulder injury better in 60 days no matter what, in the case of physical therapy. Some of them give you 15 visits for as long as you want. So then the way you choose to do your treatments and the way you choose to bill, because you have to bill the way they want you to bill, is determined by the insurance company. You have to do that for every single kid you're seeing, and you see about 50 kids a week. So that was the justification for increasing. And the other thing is that they're a revenue generating group, so most of that is covered in the revenue generation. So good question. I was anticipating that one.
Do you have a total?
I didn't add it. I do once I add it up. I'll let the CPA do that.
Okay. Okay, Peter.
What's the new grade for the board administrator? A.
A is, hold on, let's see where's the A. Board administrator, board of selectmen. That person.
I guess my question really is, why is it left off this sheet?
Why is it left off? What do you mean left off the sheet?
It's blank.
And she's in the M schedule, is she not?
Should not. So it says.
That's the proposal.
It says board administrator, and then the salary increases by $7,771. So which part is left blank?
Grade to grade.
Oh, none of them have grade to grade, do they?
Most of them do, yeah. The next one is 084,
Oh,
085.
okay, so she, okay, I see what you're asking.
Was she in the M schedule now?
No.
I will have to ask that, because I don't remember us discussing that.
She's listed in the budget book.
Yeah, there's no notation of grade and step in the budget book. While we're looking that up and totaling it up, are there any other questions?
MTP 11 is what she is now. Step 8.
Okay. Oh, that's the highest step, isn't it? Hold on.
Yes, it is.
So then that's why there's no step, or, because she can't go anywhere.
Well, she can't get any more money unless they change the grade.
I don't know that that's true.
Of course it's true.
Not if you do a reclass.
Well, right,
That's
but
what
it's got to
this-
be someplace in the
So to MTP 12.
Unless they,
Or is there a max?
No, there isn't.
there's no, right,
There's
so
a
she's
new
at the
max.
max, and they decided that she should have more salary, and the only way to do that is to increase her salary. They can't increase her grade or her step.
So they're increasing
I'm
the
not really
max.
objecting to it, Carolyn,
Yeah.
but this, if it goes into this finance committee report like this, it's like covering something up.
Okay, so we need some numbers, some letters there. All right, I will find that out.
That's interesting, because you said she's an MTP or ATP?
MTP.
Well, it's called MTP, it's the management schedule. It's the management, whatever it is.
Yeah, there's so many different classes here. Firefighters,
Yeah.
management.
There are two AT, the management plan is called, there are two ATP, but one MTP is like this.
So is she in the management classification and salary plan?
No, she's not in the M schedule now.
Okay.
She's in one of these ATPs, and it's the administrative one, I believe. Yes, ATP 11 on page 222. Board administrator. Plus,
Okay, 222, 11, oh, board administrator, there she is. Or there it is, the position.
yeah.
Oh, so she's going from no, she's board administrator is the title. Okay.
So she's going from an 11, she must be going up,
The M schedule.
or going to just going to 12 or 13 or 14.
On the budget book, it says she's going to MTP.
MC,
MTP.
what number?
In the salary detail.
Same, it's 11.8, I believe.
Okay, so in the budget book, that's where she is now. This is taking her out of that and moving her higher.
Into management is what you're saying?
Well, I don't know.
In the salary detail, it's MTP 11, and in the back of the book, it's ATP 11, so it's kind of clear what it is.
Well, we just need to know,
That's just the way that Sandy Pooler distinguishes between the two ATP tables.
so right now she's ATP 11, 8.
Yeah.
So,
They're putting her, I don't know exactly what they call it, but she's going up to a higher management level than what she is.
right, which means she could be going up to a 12.
And in doing that, her stipend she no longer will receive a stipend for her work on selectmen nights. It will be built into her new salary rather than separate stipend.
Okay, so we really need to know that detail. Why don't we go through the rest of this and you can report back on Monday,
Okay.
okay? Okay, are there any other questions on the first section? Okay, the second section, by adding the following positions.
So total is,
Oh, do we have a total?
The total all around? Sorry?
Total.
The total for that?
Well, the total is
54,000.
Okay.
54,429.
Do we all have a summary sheet for Monday?
Yeah, there'll be some tentative things on it.
Okay. If you could do that, I appreciate it.
If I can get the tax rate stuff. I haven't got that yet, I'll find out.
Okay. If you can shoot it to me, I'll take a look at it too before it goes out. Okay. Okay, so the next part is adding the following positions. Page 2. Carolyn?
So are there any questions about these? So some of these additions are only additions, and that would be the HVAC technician. And this was a contracted position in the past, and now we've hired that person because it actually costs us less to hire them and offer them benefits. And we get better service because we're not calling them and then having them come over
Okay.
in the
But,
building.
but these are just adding positions into the pay plan. These aren't adding people.
Well, in that case, it is adding a person.
Well, then, it shouldn't be there then. You're saying the HVAC is both a new position and a new person?
Well, it's the same person that was contracting with us before. So he was contracting with us before, and now he's a full-time employee
Where's the money to pay his salary?
from his contract work, from the contract work.
Okay, so that's in the budget book?
Yes.
Okay, but all the rest are just positions in the pay plan?
Yes.
Okay, are there any questions? Peter?
Carolyn, that 2G replaces somebody, I think.
The environmental planner, yes, that, if I can find it.
The title, I mean, changes.
Right. So that's attached to a reclass.
Oh, there it is, E.
So it's actually, so the environmental planner D you're looking at?
Yeah, G is replaced, that replaces 3E, the conservation administrator.
Yes.
Which used to be a part-time position, but
Exact, yes.
recently it's been.
So that job is connected with one of the jobs we delete.
And is that the same for 2H, Assistant Director of Planning and Community Development? Looks like that's replacing 3H.
I think so.
It's like they're just getting rid of the designation as Housing Director.
G. So we're looking at 2G?
2H and 3F.
Assistant Director.
Huh.
I'm sure John's right on that.
She changed the letters from the time that we did this. Yes, yes, the letters are different. That's why I'm confused. Yes, those two are related.
Okay, so it's just a title change.
Yes, exactly. Well, and she's going to a AP, well, no, you're right, in this case, it's a title change. AP 12. Yes?
Go back to the HVAC technician, where is that in the budget? It's in facilities budget, right?
It's in, let me look at what the name, what I have next to, what I have underneath it. Yeah, it's in the facilities budget.
I don't, which
It's not a salaried position. It's in the, it's in an expense for contracted services.
But this is a salaried position.
So up until now, it's been, it has been a contracted job.
So expenses should come down and salary should go up, but we can't put
But
a
it
salary
doesn't-
position in the
but it-
expense lines.
Oh, so I see what you're saying. So you're saying that there
There should be an expense line that's
something.
reduced and a salary line,
Okay,
and
which
there
page
should
is-
be a new position in the salary line.
Which is the facilities page?
118.
Alan, I think there's a problem with doing that before the vote's taken.
Before the reclassification goes there.
Yeah, you can't,
Okay.
the money gets in here, not in there.
But there's no money, attached to it.
Okay.
Yes.
So the expense line's already been reduced in some
What he's
place.
saying is you can't add to the wages.
Is that in the maintenance
No
line,
position.
facilities, or 118?
It's a timing item.
Right. Are you on 118?
Where was that contract before? Was that in 5202?
Let's see if anything's been reduced. Maintenance has been reduced. It was probably in maintenance.
Okay.
Because a technician would be doing maintaining services.
Okay. As long as we're not undercounting.
But I can have her check.
Okay. Because if it goes into the reclass article, then it shouldn't be in the expenses of facilities.
Except there's no money attached to his job here, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, okay, going back to the board administrator, I'm looking at the ADP 11, which is 87,207, which is the number that's in the budget. And then if you add 7,771, it doesn't hit any place. The top position, the top step in ADP 12 is 94,182 versus 94,978. In other words, it would,
Okay, you switched jobs on me. What job are we talking about?
board administrator.
Okay.
In the M schedule, there aren't any fixed numbers.
Okay, well, that would be, that would be good to know, but if she's still in the non-union administrative, technical, and professional, the ADP, then, which she is now,
That number can't be right.
the number has to hit something. So either the number of 7771 is wrong, or they're moving her into the M schedule.
Okay. Which is what I'm pretty sure they're doing. Okay. But I'll check. And then for the HVAC, I have to figure out where money is for this budget. So the other addings that aren't connected with anything is the, E, the receptionist in Health and Human Services. That person used to be a volunteer and was not there at all times. And so, they are adding the receptionist. I'm sorry, it's a different letter than E now.
Okay,
Okay.
The receptionist and an office manager.
Right, so they now will have a receptionist in, Health and Human Services at the desk.
Right, but she's
now
not-
is that in the
she's
budget?
not full-time.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mary
I was
Mark.
gonna say, she's not full-time receptionist.
Is it a half-time position?
I don't remember offhand, but
Okay.
you can look.
Yeah. So in this fiscal year, fiscal 18, is there somebody in that position?
No, it's a volunteer.
Okay, so they want to put this position in, and is it funded next year?
You mean, is it in the budget book?
Yeah,
Yes.
it is, okay. Okay, are there any other questions on page 2? Okay, Page 3 is just deleting positions.
Right.
And some of them are connected to other jobs. We're only deleting a couple of things. One is the junior accountant in the comptroller's office. We removed that job completely from the comptroller's office. The other two are the Health and Human Services clerk. That's actually related to something else. And the project manager in Health and Human Services is related to something else back under
Office management.
under adding. And that's a bit confusing, but I can talk us through that one.
Well, I mean, they're just deleting positions out of the pay and classification plan.
Right.
Okay, so it sounds like the only thing we need to nail down is Part 1A.
Well, and 2B and 2 the HVAC and 2 the receptionist. My letters are incorrect
Okay.
on my sheet. Okay. Was there anything else anyone wanted me to check?
Okay, so why don't we take a look, then revisit this on Monday. Article. Okay, let me just go through. We have done 25, 26 is Monday, 27 we voted, 28, okay, 20 parking. So we have to do parking on Monday. It's Article 28, and the pay and classification is 26. Okay, budgets, capital budget is done. 2031 is done. Water and sewer is done.
No,
that's
Monday.
No, water and sewer, the warrant articles. Right. 34 Minuteman is done. Committees and commissions except for 35 arts and culture. And water bodies is done. Community preservation. Harry Barber, 5-year disability. OPEB is done. Appropriation overlay reserve. Cemetery, free cash. Term stabilization. So the last number is Article 47, which is the override stabilization fund. Okay, so we have a full schedule on Monday. I'd hate to drag everybody back because we got to do 20 minutes of work on Wednesday. So please, nail all these down. If you have any questions, if you want to run things, by me to make sure, that seems to fit in, or just have any questions at all, call me. Hopefully, by Friday, so you could, if you need to get any information, you could do it Monday morning. And that should take care of it. Any other business before the committee? Okay, meeting adjourned.